Turkey, where civilization began, land of 35,000 prehistoric villages some more than 6,000 years old, with more Roman ruins than Italy and more Greek ruins than Greece. The four of us set off on a 3-week bus tour with Grand Circle Travel. We started in Istanbul, city of 14 million people, which straddles both the European and Asian continents. We drove past modern apartment and office buildings sitting side by side with 2,000-year-old Roman ruins. People still live in many of the old Roman houses. They just keep rebuilding the walls after each earthquake and putting on a new roof. Or not. There aren't any Costco's or Walmarts in Turkey. Seems like every person has a stall in a marketplace somewhere, and they've perfected the art of luring passers-by into their stalls. No women work in the markets, just men. A lot of shopkeepers thought I was German, because I have German features, I guess, and they tossed out their best German koan. It never worked, but I got to practice my German. They make kebabs out of everything. Lamb, chicken, pork, dog. No, I'm just kidding. I never did figure out what testes kebabs were, though. The food was always really good, and the best meal we ever had, believe it or not, was in a filling station. Most women in rural areas wear scarves. We ate one meal in a rural Turkish home. It was a wonderful homemade soup and bread and, whatever it was, we ate it, and we enjoyed it, most of it anyway. Turns out a chaplain friend from my hometown held several services at Ephesus when he was stationed at Izmir.
Olarak teslim ediyorum komutanım. Turulay Demir Samsun. Nöbetimi vukuatçı olarak teslim alıyorum komutanım. Adem Öztürkmensin. Nöbetimi vukuatçı olarak teslim ediyorum komutanım. Yanaralı İzmir. Nöbetimi vukuatçı olarak teslim alıyorum komutanım.
Fake! Omza! Esas duruş! Konsolla! Marş! Kat! Aday! Sola! Dön! Bir adım ileri! Marş! Sola! Dön! Fake! Omza! İstikamet bayrak! Uygun adım! Marş!
Bu alanları açabilir miyiz lütfen?
Göremedim.
Beyefendi, hanımefendi, bu alanı da açalım lütfen.
Sağ baş! Fake! Omza! Ses duruş!
Dogs and cats roam everywhere in all the towns. The cities provide feeding and watering stations all over town for them, and they spay them and neuter them, so they seem happy and docile and they don't bark or fight. They missed a few, though, because we saw some puppies and kittens every now and then. The Turks told us that camels are, quote, nasty, mean, smelly, stubborn, and they spit, unquote. Rana, our guide, was a real tiger. We watched this Einstein look-alike toss a pot, and I was so impressed that I made my only significant Turkish purchase in his shop.
Sağlam ayaklar için aynı zamanda jimnastik yapıyor.
For healthy people, this is good exercise.
Yeah. You don't have to be agents, you don't have to dance. Look at that. Ah. Those buttons are coming out.
They grow their own silkworms and spin silk into rugs and wall hangings. By the time she's 50, she will have carpal tunnel in her hands and a ruined back and will be forced to retire.
I mean, after 50, they are 50 years old, they retire. Because they
That's not snow, it's travertine. Calcium carbonate flows out of the mountain and eventually hardens into white rock. Years ago, there were lots of hotels on top of this mountain, and people swam and soaked in these warm pools. But the government made this into a national heritage site and tore down all the man-made structures. The Romans were the first ones to recognize the business opportunities here. The government didn't tear down their buildings, though. The earthquakes did, and their columns are still lying where they fell into the pools. Amphitheaters were built by every tribe who ever ended up in this country. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some are steeper, some are fancier, some don't have as much earthquake damage as others, and some are actually still being used. There were a lot of gladiators, Christians, and lions killed in these things, but all the blood's been cleaned up. Some amphitheaters had a stage where they held plays. These would have also had a pit where the orchestra played. Some were just an arena where fights to the death were held, between two men or between men and beasts. There are so many ruins and so few graduate archaeology students and so little time. They'll be brushing the dirt off of these rocks in 1,000,000 years from now. Every field you pass has rocks in it, and that means there's a town under that dirt that they're going to dig up someday. Until then, I guess they'll grow potatoes there. Those columns look nice and white now, but they were lying on the ground under 10 feet of dirt just a few years ago. Erosion works fast to cover up things once the earthquakes topple all the buildings and people abandon the towns. It costs $1,500 just to set a column back up again, so work progresses only as fast as the money rolls in. One of the groups of people who lived here, the Hittites, who moved here from Germany, built a town on top of a mountain, and they had a library with 24,000 clay tablets, sort of like books today, written in cuneiform and then baked in the sun. When the quake hit, they just left them all in their library and ran. People dug them up recently and put some of them in a museum. One of them is a love poem, the oldest ever found. Things haven't really changed all that much in the past several thousand years. Back then, just like today, they built market stalls right on the street, cheek by jowl, and people hawked their wares to every passerby. Today, every ruin, no matter how minute, has its crop of stalls, with the townspeople out there trying to sell everything imaginable, and even some things you can't imagine anybody would ever buy. Every town had walls around it. I guess everybody was always trying to kill people in the next town. The streets and all the main buildings were all lined or covered with marble, often brought in from many miles away. I guess they had slaves to do the heavy lifting, and maybe the slaves were the people from the next town whose walls weren't strong enough. They had indoor plumbing with drainage lines running underneath the potties to take the sewage outside the city walls. Woe to those who lived outside the walls. And they had under-the-floor heating systems with wood fires to heat the air and slaves to fan it underneath the floors. Pretty sophisticated, huh? Those clever Romans brought water from as far away as 60 miles and even figured out how to get it to go uphill to the tops of mountains. Cappadocia, talk about a weird place, sort of like Mesa Verde, but really cooler. They dug rooms right out of the soft rock, put rugs down on the floor and called it home. Only problem is that erosion keeps on working, so over the years, with rain and all, one day, instead of a living room wall, you have a major picture window. For sure, no two houses are alike, though. It looks like one big hobbit town to me. Each house had several rooms, with a living room, a kitchen, and sleeping rooms, and doors in between all of them, inside. Indoor plumbing was a very recent addition, if at all. Some of the doors were way off the ground, which were then accessed with very tall ladders. I think these were the people who invented chamber pots. We went inside a house that had been in the same family for 5 generations. The owner was born in that house and he still lived there. He makes his living charging people to peek inside now, because not that many people live in them anymore. The area is now a World Heritage Site and they don't want people living in the homes. I guess they can make more money out of them as tourist attractions now.